What is going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. I am one of your hosts. I'm Marty. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Down one man tonight. Kellen's going to be on a bit of a break, but he will be back at some point. Logan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Wondering, is it in bad taste to wear the T-shirt of the band that you're talking about on the episode? Is that like wearing the shirt of the band you're going to see in concert?
I still don't see how that's why that's a bad thing. I mean, you're going to see the band.
Depends on how much ass you really want to kiss. I don't know.
It's true. And I'm here to kiss some ass, I think, tonight. So it felt fitting. But yeah, other than that, doing good. Excited to dive into some tech this week. But before that, I was kind of listening to the opposite of technical death metal over the weekend. Actually, I'm here to join the TJ fan club for Elder. I've been a long time Elder fan, and I wasn't around when a certain album was lampooned on here. But what Dead Roots Stirring is a good album, and this is
Dead Roots Stirring rules.
And this is their latest one, which is a bit more not metal. I would not pick this for a Metallurgy Album Club. The other one is debatable, but this one definitely not. This is like they're basically at the progressive side of stoner. Like, I honestly do enjoy this album. I have to approach it more as a progressive rock listen than anything. But Innate Passage from, I want to say 2021 or 2022, but yeah, Elder, great band. Enjoyed spinning them over the weekend before diving into some tech for the rest of the week, which perfect timing. I actually got this in the mail from Whatnotting. This is my latest Whatnot protege.
Oh, I've been trying so hard not to go back on it. I've been good. I have not.
I have to actually go on and actually spend some money. I'm the one that started the whole
TJ, I can't believe you.
I haven't spent a nickel yet.
You've cost hundreds of dollars.
You're welcome.
Of not your own money.
The month of December, I bought over 30 things. A lot for Parker's Christmas and shit. But yeah, still,
it's too easy. You get in there, and you're like, I just want to check it out. I just want to see what they're showing.
I'll just see what's going on there.
And then they're showing this, and you're like, no one's bidding on this. Swipe, and then that keeps happening. So I bought an Immortal CD on Monday, doing that exact thing, where I just was checking it out, and
under $10.
It was $5 for.
Dude, this is your new Goodwill. This is your new Goodwill.
I'm telling you, it's making me relive my glory days of eBay. Everyone's probably got theirs, but like back in the day, eBay, you could find CDs for like $5 to $8 for like high quality stuff. No more, but Whatnot. Spiral Architect was also $5 before shipping. So, tech, progressive tech metal, like clean vocals, but I think it's still a good segue into Necrophagist that we're going to talk about later tonight. That bass tone and the way that they write some of their guitar melodies, I think, is definitely a little bit similar. And then I was listening to a lot of other technical death metal bands that I kind of grew up with. One of those early scenes that I connected with as a teenager somehow. This was actually the first record I ever purchased with my own money. Antithesis by Origin. 2008 album. This is my favorite Origin album. I definitely enjoy the band overall, but I don't think they've surpassed this album. So, blistering guitar work, almost too fast. They're definitely like pushing the boundaries of what could be considered tasteful guitar playing, but it's impressive to witness for sure. So I enjoyed spinning this week, and then a bunch of other technical death metal bands from like the early 2000s, late 2000s that we'll be talking about in a bit.
All right, DJ.
Yeah, so with the exception of this one CD, everything else I listened to this week was either I don't own and is on the way here. And I've kind of put off some shopping since Christmas. I'm still trying to pay off all of those wonderful gifts I gave to everyone. So I was checking out a band from Bahrain called Rife, Deceptor Creator. They're kind of a black and death metal band. They have one record that was released in 22. Interesting backstory, you know, Middle East metal bands, oppressive governments, blah blah blah. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that kind of stuff, but that new Ruins of Beverast, the Temple Chef. You know, I'm digging that. I'm digging that a lot. It's on its way. I think it's really cool. And then a Danish black gaze band called Mall. I don't know how the hell you say it. The new record's called Dream Crush. I'm really digging that a lot. And then with this band, I'm going back and listening to some stuff from around that time. So Anada, Under a Stone with No Inscription. I do have their last record, Conductor's Departure, and if you're not familiar with Anada, you should be. And then Suffocation, Effigy of the Forgotten, and Pierced from Within. I have the double version of that. I listened to both of these, and then Human Remains, using sickness as a hero. I ordered that one as well. If anybody remembers that band, just I don't know, they're bizarre, techie death metal early. You know, I don't know if it's tech is the right word for it, but yeah, this Necrophagist got me going down some rabbit holes this week. So
Aaron's asking, did he really say a band from Bahrain?
yes.
Okay. Is that the band called Rice? Is that the one you
Rife, R-Y-T-H.
I thought you said rice.
Yeah, rice.
Right.
Right camel meat and rice. Yeah, Rife. Deceptor Creator is the record. It came out in 22. They're really good. They're really solid. I guess they've been around. I think what I read was 2008. But again, the whole, if any of you ever follow kind of the Middle Eastern metal scene, Middle East, you know, that whole part of the world, the bands that do get into metal, they struggle with the government and that sort of stuff. You know, oppressive restrictions on speech and that nature. And so they try, you know, they have a hard time. So they didn't put out anything for a long time. And then didn't dig down too far. I don't know if they left and recorded somewhere else or whatever, but the record's really solid. It's really, really cool shit. There's some clean vocals on it, and they kind of mix it up and stuff, but it's really well put together. It's very interesting and cool.
All right. Jim.
Yeah, so a record show came to my neck of the woods this past
Fun.
weekend.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, and my wife was in a really good mood, and she just let me go buck wild. So, so I'm going to, over the next few weeks, just kind of show things that I picked up. And of course, been listening to as well. So first is Walls of Jericho, Halloween. This is Noise Press from 1986.
Nice.
Sounds
So good.
Yeah, sounds really great.
Hey, Aaron, that's a speed metal record, right?
Yeah. Very excited to have this. This is my favorite Halloween. You know, though I love the Keeper of the Seven Keys, both of 1 and 2, but this one, as Marty has always said, this is the heaviest, and but yet still catchy and awesome. You know what I mean? Just it's a must-have, as I'm sure many of you out there agree.
Some of that artwork on the back, I've always wondered. So bad.
Yeah, the weird kind of looks like a pumpkin guy, but he's kind of sick. Like he looks like he's about to throw up or something.
A little green, yeah, like he just got off a boat or something. Yeah.
Maybe that's a kid pumpkin, right? Is that how they age?
It's not ripe.
Infernal Overkill.
Nice.
This is the 85 licensed edition from the Steam Hammer.
Nice.
So another really good one. Got a really, really great deal on this, and the guy was willing to wheel and deal on this. So I was super happy to bring this home.
Most
I
of
got
those
it off
guys
the
are at
wall,
those
right,
things.
but
Yeah.
yeah, super awesome, super stoked. But besides the old presses, they had some like cheap prices on some represses as well. Case in point, this Razor here, Executioner song, good old Canadian speed / thrash. So been getting these guys like a lot the last year. Like I missed them my first go around. Maybe I guess over the last couple of years, really, I've been kind of listening to more and more of their stuff. But yeah, really dig this. So yeah, that's what I've been spinning, and more to come over the next few weeks.
All right. Well, for me, I've been a lot of homework, stuff for reviews, Paradise Lost. Everybody go check that out on Friday. Albert from Decibel and David Gelke, author of the Paradise Lost book, are coming on. We're going to be discussing the Paradise Lost catalog. But I've been trying to slip a few things in here, not much. Epitome of Torture by Sodom. Ever since we did the Sodom dive, I kind of hit a wall with Sodom. I went as far as tapping the vein and never really inspected much after. And that was kind of a mistake because doing that deep dive, listening to them all in a row, it's evident that they've always been really good. Even when they weren't, I used to think Alan made the comment and I agree with him. I for some reason, I thought they went down kind of a punky road for a while, which I like punk, but I don't know, not necessarily in Sodom. Like a full embracing of it, vocally, especially with Tom, but it's not really true. It isn't. It was a very brief stint, and what they did was still cool, very thrashy. But yeah, so I'm in the process of when they turn up, I'm trying to fill in all the holes, and there were many holes in my Sodom collection. So Epitome of Torture arrived here a month ago. I'm finally getting around to it. This is the Argentinian Icarus Records pressing. Looks good. Turns out good. This is one we talked about on the Discord a bit. Go check out the Discord server, everybody. It's a cool place. Every year or so, I pull this out again. I've been in a Big Sisters of Mercy's kick, and I've pulled out Vision Thing the other day. I never really liked this record that much. He got Tony James from Sig Sig Sputnik in the band, and the music sounds like Sig Sig Sputnik. Very boring, kind of palm muted crunching type of goth rock. There's a couple good songs. More is really good. I think that was the big hit. Vision Thing's not bad. I don't know. There's a few good songs on here, but I don't get why people like this one so much. It's just kind of a step in the wrong direction, in my opinion. And on Sunday, we're going to be getting together with S. Craig Zoller and talking about this record, the new Megadeth. Got me a copy at All Wally World at Walmart. And been spinning this a bit. Enjoy it. For a swan song record, I think it's, played a little safe, I guess, but it's a solid record. But we'll talk more about that on Sunday. But today, we're discussing the 2004 final album by the German-born Necrophagist. The name of the album is Epitaph, and it came out on Relapse Records. For those of you unfamiliar, Necrophagist was a German technical death metal band founded and fronted by guitarist and vocalist Mohamed Suismez. The band uses Baroque music influenced compositions paired with extreme metal drumming. That was a Wikipedia regurgitation portion for the day. TJ, what was your first impression?
I've actually, so in solidarity with our missing brother, who couldn't be here, I decided not to listen to the record, and instead I have conjured up some trivia about jogging that our brother Kellen is so fond of. He probably calls it running, but whatever. Like, did you know that the first 5K marathon was done in Samaria with prisoners of war, and the losers were eaten for breakfast? But anyway, no, I was kidding. So I'd never checked these guys out before, and I put this on. My first impression of this is fucking boring. I was just kind of like, wow, just kind of like by the numbers arpeggio leads, and I just was kind of like, not all that impressed initially, my first spin. And then I've subsequently listened to, I think I've listened to this about 8 times in between everything else.
Thankfully, it was only 32 minutes long.
Yeah, that really, because I could really just kind of put it on and kind of dive into it. I have pulled out a lot of, stuff out of here that I really did enjoy. We'll get into it. I did find some treasure here. I didn't hate it, but I don't know. Some of the stuff I read online about as highly regarded as this record is, I personally am not. There's stuff that came out around the same time as this that I think, before, during, and after that is way better than this. In my opinion, but whatever, opinions are, we've all elbows, assholes, whatever. But yeah, initially my opinion has improved over the course of the week. Initially I was just kind of like, this is pretty average, but yeah, so I digress. We move along.
Jim.
Yeah, so this isn't my bag, right? Super clean, shred-tastic, death metal, or really, anything that's just like focused solely on shred. Gets kind of, just kind of goes in one and out the other for me. But I gotta say, I was surprised sort of right off the bat with the melodicism in the soloing and stuff, and it grabbed me, man. I was not expecting that. You know what I mean? I had checked out some of their stuff like years ago, and I just don't think I really made it past like the first couple of songs. Like, whatever. But being album club, I gave it like a real listen and really paid attention. And the solos had way more feel in them than I was anticipating. Yeah, man, they were shred-tastic and perfectly executed, neoclassical arpeggios and stuff like that. But there was some life underneath that. You know what I mean? The production was super clean, and I think it's too clean, and I think it kind of weakens the impact of this overall. But if you're a fan of stuff like this and Origin and stuff like that, then that doesn't bother you. You know what I mean? That kind of is par for the course for this. But
yeah.
But for me, like I went into this thinking that I'm not gonna. This isn't gonna be for me, but I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would, and I'm happy to discuss it in detail tonight.
All right. Well, I remember getting promos for this back in the day, and I don't know why I never kept it. Again, I'm with Jim. This isn't my thing. It just isn't. It's not. I went into it open-minded, though, thankfully, and I listened to this, and my point of reference for stuff like this is, oddly enough, Death Row, Deception Ignored. That to me is like my tech masterpiece. It's dirty, it's thrashy, it's innovative, it's good. I like Atheist. I like, Cynic. I like certain things, but I never listened to it. So thankfully, yes, it was only 32-minute listen, but the thing that surprised me right away is, these guys present as very techy, but on the same token, it is not so perplexing or strange that it's alienating. They're, like Jim mentioned, there's a lot of melody on display here. And I think the advantage of it is, I agree, I think it's too clinically sterile sonically, but the way it's mixed, it's kind of the way they wanted it, the way it works with the music, I guess. It allowed, the left-right separation. The guitars are playing hard left, hard right, and they're doing different things at the same time, which is very interesting. And the way they work with syncopation, it makes them sound it makes some of the riffs sound very interesting, and they do so by not fully going over the top technical. I think bands like Archspire and shit like that today have gotten way more over the top crazy. I listen to that stuff and I'm just like, not for me. I don't like it. I don't like the mumble rap style vocals. I don't like any of that crap. But this here, I was kind of surprised. And like TJ said, I didn't hate it initially, but I just like, oh boy, here we go. But there's actually songs here. There's hooks in some of these songs. So about 8 times through this record, yeah, it stuck with me. What'd you think of it, Logan?
Well, this pick and kind of this episode is a sequel to one that you guys did with Kellen probably 2.5 years ago. Once again, shout out to Kellen, where he picked Cabinet by Spawn of Possession and basically stated it was one of those big early albums for him that, not only was big with him getting into metal in general, but kind of taught him how to listen to certain extreme metal styles. And like, this is kind of my equivalent of that. This is one of a very early death metal albums that ever really clicked with me. This has been one that has kind of stuck with me through the years, and it's kind of a cornerstone of, like, I guess, my death metal tastes in a way. I don't think it necessarily, my tastes have evolved that much past this, like wanting more tech. Like, I'm also not into Archspire, and I think where the scene has kind of progressed past Necrophagist has definitely lost the script in a way. But I don't know, it's hard to look back at this album and not see like the pinnacle of what you could do with technical death metal while still being death metal at your core. And I think it's cool to hear you guys still talking about, everyone's at least mentioned some positives. So I think there are things to like on here from just being a fan of death metal in general. And I think the songwriting is a big piece of it. Like, at the core of these songs is a infectious, like, classic death metal catchiness, like tracks like Stab Wound and Stillborn One are like really come at you with like the riffs, but then also even like these simple death metal chorus lines that can kind of jump out. And then I think the melody and the way that they're incorporating the virtuosity of the guitar work in here is more tasteful than other bands end up being. Is it technical? Is it sterile? Is it like overly produced? Yes, but I think that's also par for the course. That's an intentional decision, and that's, to a certain extent, that's kind of what you want out of tech death. Like, that's the direction that it was kind of going in, is, improving everything. And one thing I do admire about this style is I think it was trying to push the envelope of what could be incorporated into death metal back in the 2000s. And it was trying to take what early 90s, tech bands like Atheist and Cynic were doing, but just make it even more over the top. And, the jazz fusion elements, let's up that. Let's put some neoclassical arpeggios and, just guitar leads all over this thing. Let's do it big, and let's everyone be as skilled on our instrument as possible. So I admire how boundary pushing this style of music was in the 2000s, and to me it felt like an honest continuation of what death metal was from the 90s, and what kind of death metal was, the direction it was heading in. The maybe not the side that was going for more exhumed corpse style stuff, but like there was a certain style of death metal that was going more technical. Like, all the bands were trying to be more technical, and I think this kind of pushed it to its natural conclusion, if you will. But I'm starting to ramble, and let me jump into the question, which is kind of tied to this. So, where does the style of technical death metal found on Necrophagist's Epitaph sit in terms of death metal's legacy? Is it a continuation and evolution of the sound from the late 80s and early 90s, like the classical OSDM, or period? Or is this era of cold, calculated technicality a one-off experiment?
TJ.
Well, probably. I mean, there are bands that were doing. I mean, like again, I'm probably going to mention Anata more than one time tonight because, I mean, they were already doing this 10 years before this, right? I think it was 93 or whatever it was, and they're as tech as anything else. But I think the big defining difference here is where a band like Anata is more angular in every respect. This band, these guys were pushing to try to bring something that was, again, technically precise, very specific, something that was, polished up and over the top in that regard, all the arpeggios and things like that, where in, the other bands, say Suffocation, again, those guys are every bit as, while they, the brutal bands picked up a lot of those cues from them, but they're still, Suffocation's always been a very technical band, very tech band, in my opinion. You have lead work that doesn't lean into all the arpeggios and all the, like neoclassical and things like that. So, these guys are definitely trying to be, a band apart in a lot of regards. But I think to see what they're doing, I don't think that they were doing anything that, in my opinion, was all that groundbreaking in terms of, songwriting and style. I mean, they definitely, this record in and of itself has its own feel, to be sure, but I don't know. But it definitely, there is a progression here that they're a natural kind of stream of moving from one phase to the other, that this particular, main guy behind this especially, was trying to follow with this. I read that he actually, what was it? He wrote all this music. What the hell is it called? He used a computer program called Power Tab Editor, and eventually in Guitar Pro. And I was looking at it. So you basically go in and use your computer to write all this stuff in tab, and then it converts it, whatever. And so he was looking for, and you listen to this stuff. I mean, the precision in these riffs, for better or for worse, is pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
I'll get into my opinion of that later, but so it's like, is it for, yeah, definitely, it's definitely a growth. It's definitely an outgrowth, because you see all that. I mean, all these bands are all taking from Death Chuck, and what he was doing in the later era of his career.
Big influence.
100%. And in just everything the last two records especially, everybody, they're all kind of coming from there, and so I think it was just an outpouring of that. And then you get into bands like Origin. I had their first record, and I couldn't fucking believe that record. I mean, geez, oh Pete's, man. I just beyond it. I listened to it quite a bit, but it was obnoxious, just like, Lord have mercy, but yeah, I mean, to his question, yeah, this is definitely, these guys trying to move beyond something and incorporate, the influence of these other, for sure. And I think it's definitely not a one-off, as we can see today, where, bands like this are still thriving and becoming quite huge. And even in the comments, the hardcore kids are getting into all these bands and stuff. And so it's definitely, something, that's going to be with us. I mean, there was a time when I would just crave this stuff. I was definitely into the, the techier things, but I do, I look at it and it's like, I definitely find that I'm more interested in the stuff that's way more angular, way more dissonant. But then, when the song structures are good, when everything's written right, I'm a sucker for that too. You know, just like when I can get sucked into I'll get sucked into an R&B hook on some damn song that none of these guys you would ever listen to. But here I am, just like, this is great. It's so stupid, but when it's good, it's good. So,
Jim.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a continuation of what was started, by more technical death metal bands like Suffocation and Cryptopsy and stuff like that. It didn't just appear in the ether. You can hear the influences there from the aforementioned bands, and definitely like someone had mentioned in the comments, and I think they're right, like hyperblasting, latter era death, and Harry Gorgut's in there, in terms of its speed and precision, that part of it is new, and really, really focusing, even in the riffs, they'll do like a neoclassical run, like as part of a riff, not just in the solos, which I really dig that. And I think that's unique. You don't have to just wait for the solo to hear something, from Racer X or Yngwie, like it's there, in the actual riff, like before the verse even starts on some songs. So, it's got influences, but it also, it's put together very tightly, and that is kind of an art in and of itself. It's not an art that I appreciate as much. It's just getting in there, sweating it out in the practice room or a studio, and just kind of making it happen. The human factor is very important to me, as a listener. But at the same time, I mean, I respect this. There's no denying, the capabilities on display here, and just the arrangements are cool, man. There's killer headbanging worthy type riffs in here. The vocals are delivered with energy. So it's more than just like a shred fest. I think there is something else going on here that made it an intriguing listen for me. I do feel, and now I'm going more into the record more and leaving Logan's question behind, so I'll keep it brief. But I will say that that its brevity of an album, I think, helps. I think that too much of this can definitely start to make your eyes glaze over. My eyes would definitely glaze over. But 32 minutes. Hey man, I'm in. And it was a good experience, and it made it easy to kind of flip and start listening to again afterwards. So, there is some songwriting here. I'm a little dismayed by what TJ was talking about, that he was using a program to put it together. Like that's a little kind of a bummer. But
I think, to be fair to him, it's a writing tool, and if he's composing on the computer, it's basically a tablature tool. And from what I read on Wikipedia about it, because I'm not too super familiar with it, but I kind of know. And so, I think probably what he was doing was, I want to assume that he was working through his ideas, and then he was plotting it all out in tab. Because I guess on this record, he had a whole band versus the first record he didn't. So he must have put it all out on this machine. But I think that it adds to the clinical precision to the way these songs sound, because it's just like,
well, if he's just using it as a writing,
I think it's a writing tool. Yeah.
That I'm okay with, because he's still got the notes are in his head. He's just using that to keep track. That's okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was more like he's like using that as an aid to concoct.
No. I don't think it's just a tablature tool, and it's actually the one he was using is actually pretty interesting, because the Euborg Nate said that. Yeah, it was 100%. He's just using that to plot out everything. I mean, I used to write in tab way back when I had more patience and time to do such thing, and it, but he's got the ideas in his head, and then it will do the tablature and musical notation at the same time. I was reading about the specific one, and I was like, well, that's pretty neat.
So you can hear it as MIDI notes, basically.
Yeah, and it does. The program he uses, it goes into MIDI and all this other stuff too as well, so he can push it all around. And so it's I don't think it's not like he was using an AI thing to write for him. He
Yeah,
was
I mean,
creating. Yeah.
This is like 2000 we're talking about. We're not
Yeah.
talking. This is
Yeah.
over 20 years
No,
ago.
yeah, it just
So
Yeah, still, I
to
mean,
me, there's not
hey,
much of a difference between someone just hammering it out in practice space versus using this to help write it down and then maybe
well, I'm going to disagree
help
with you
speak
there,
to
man.
another person.
I'm sorry. I'm never going to be like, I don't feel like it's the same. I mean, you use whatever you got to do, I guess. Like I said, I'm cool with it. The notes are in his head and he was just using that to get them down. But to me, like, I'm old school, man. You know, get out there, bang out the riff. You know,
Some of us do our learning on the streets and our musical sculpting on the streets.
Well, streets are tough.
It makes sense. You
Yeah.
know,
Some of us prefer our bedrooms. God.
You know, write out the tab by hand. You know what I mean? Or
Tabs. Who needs tabs?
You know, jam with your fucking friend. I mean, I'm old school. I'm not fucking ashamed of it. That's, you know, that's cool, but that's just me. That's just not my thing. And you know, more power to him, man. But you know, I'm blood, sweat, and tears, old school metal, man. And I'll die on that hill. That's it for me.
I think, to your question, is a continuation and evolution of the sound from the late 80s, early 90s classic OSDM period into something new. You know, letting the player scale through after you listen to the album. I don't use Spotify anymore. I use Apple Music. You know, it populates, the algorithm feeds you other music. Well, a couple songs popped up from Gorguts Obscura. Now, I listened to that, and in relation to your question, I think the more techie side of Gorguts, I think that comes from the old school influence. You got that band, you know, bands like Atheists, they were kind of a thrashy band, sort of, and I listened to Necrophagist, and I think, you know, these guys were probably listening to a lot of Atheists and a lot of Suffocation, which Suffocation, again, they moved the ball forward by being super technical, but you could also tell they came from an old school brutal death metal frame of reference. This, to me, it sounds like a younger guy's adaptation of that. And, you know, using the computer as an aid, great. If the tool works, whatever helps you make this music. And I'm sure it was probably easier for him, being the sole songwriter, to put all of his thoughts on paper and have the guys learn and say, here you go. Here's the MIDI, learn your parts, and we'll go from there. And if there needs to be alterations, fine. But I think this is a bit outside of the old school death metal realm. I think this sits in its own kind of sphere. I don't necessarily, I wouldn't go, you know, as groundbreaking, because like I said, there were bands that did this before. And if you take Suffocation mixed with later era death and clean it up a bunch, you got kind of what Necrophagist is doing. So I don't necessarily think they're doing anything relatively groundbreaking here. I just, but what they are doing is playing very complex sounding music and making it palatable. It's not alienating when you listen to it. So yeah, but I would say, I think it is influenced by the old school, but I think it's something a bit off to the side of that. I think bands like Gorguts, they got it right. They came from the old school. They feel, you still listen to like Obscura, that album just batters and bruises you, and Luke's fucking disgusting vocals. It sounds like old school evolved. This here sounds like parts from a lot of different things set off to the side, kind of out of the timeline a bit, but it's just my opinion. What did you think, Logan?
I mean, I definitely set up the question to be like, yes, I do think this is an evolution from what was originally started, you know, in the old school, in an effort to kind of push technicality and death metal forward. And I do think it, you know, is taking that Suffocation and Cynic and Death, but then incorporating it with bands like Spiral Architect, for example. This came out in 2000. I could highlight Spastic Inc. Like, they were doing that. What is it? That first debut album came out in 1996.
Well, even Watchtower.
And I was going to mention Watchtower.
Control
too.
And Resistance by Watchtower. I mean, it's
just
super techie thrash, and it added death vocals, and it could be Necrophagist, you know?
And I think that's kind of a part of the equation to get to Epitaph here. Like Necrophagist did start with this album, which is, as you said, TJ, was just Muhammad, the main guy, basically doing it solo, onset of putrefaction. And this to me sounds like more of what you would expect, like what was around in death metal in like the late 90s, very early 2000s. But I mean, it definitely leveled up. And this is, to me, the foundation for kind of what has come from it. Like, I think Necrophagist and Epitaph is the equivalent to the modern technical death metal scene that like At the Gate Slaughter of the Soul is to like kind of lazy metalcore. There are so many bands trying to emulate this sound and this style. It kind of ruined it for a lot of different people. And like even people in the chat tonight have mentioned that a lot of the younger bands and a lot of the, you know, current scene has kind of watered down the style that was started on here, you know? So once again, to me, it's not their fault that they spawned a bunch of copycats who.
No, it never is. It's not Campbell Corpse fault. It's not At the Gates fault. It's what happened. It's the byproduct of a success, you know.
And that took like the polished production and like, you know, writing in using a computer as an aid to taking it too far to the degree where all they're using is computers and emailing back and forth, and there's no like live musical creation at all. And you know, that's kind of where we're at when it comes to a lot of technical death metal in 2026, and that's kind of how it's been for at least a decade. I feel like to me, I kind of miss the sound of this scene back in like the 2000s and even the early 2010s. You know, like the Decrepit Births and Obscuras and Beyond Creations and stuff. Like, that's, to me, that was still like a band kind of coming together and didn't sound as much of a bedroom project. And one last thing, I do like how this, or to me, this is one of the last kind of scenes of death metal that tried to progress forward and try to incorporate new things before the old school death metal revival scene really hit. You know, like this was all over the place in like the mid 2000s, and then, you know, we get Dead Congregation and Horrendous and all the OSDM bands, revival bands of like the early 2010s, and now this is kind of a past scene, if you will, like more of a niche than an actual big genre of metal. So I almost in a way prefer like the boundary pushing, or at least to me it seemed like they were trying to push boundaries than, you know, the death metal scene of today, where it's more about finding a band and copying that band and mixing in another band, and that's kind of it. It's about the sound more so than creating a boundary pushing music to me.
I would agree.
That's my soapbox.
I would agree with you on that, Logan. Especially the old school death metal, kind of taking things back in time. But you know, even one of the bands you mentioned, Horrendous, their latest album, they're kind of pushing the boundaries. They're doing some different stuff. So are bands like Tomb Mold. So are bands like, love 'em or hate 'em, Blood Incantation. I don't think Blood Incantation has got it figured out yet. I don't think they've been able to, you know, put the square peg in the round hole yet. But once that happens, they have probably a pretty incredible record coming, in my opinion.
For me, those bands, they're almost abandoning death metal in a little bit. You know,
Horrendous in particular, I was pretty surprised. That Horrendous record seemed pretty obtuse.
It is. It's more. I mean, this is where we're getting into where we're talking prog, you know, with these death metal bands, whereas as versus the tech tag,
which I think is more like we're steering into the excess and like the intensity that death metal can bring. To a sense, you know. But
all these bands start off brutal death metal, you know, old school brutal death metal styled, you know.
And who's to say, like Necrophagist, they only made 2 albums, so who's to say if we had the chance to see them do you know, a third and a fourth, maybe they would have ended up prog as well.
Yep. All right, let's discuss the musicality. Oh, good question too, Logan. Good job. Discuss musicality and composition of Epitaph. TJ.
Well, this gets a little tricky for me on this part, because it's like we've all touched on some of this already. I mean, all the performances on this record are flawless and so precise. And I think for me, this is kind of where it starts killing a lot of what's going on here, because they're trying so hard to be so technically proficient and make it shine that way that it adds a staleness to this. But it gets saved for me when these songs are so well crafted. These songs are so smartly done, and they're done. And none of this is a short record. They're short songs. They really lean a lot on, keeping the tracks between the lines. There's a lot of repetition, the leads and stuff. And but it's all used, and it's very tastefully done. It's that, they write, they whatever, they write really good songs, but it's just, like I get like the leads, Jim's liking lead. I'm listening to these leads, and I'm hearing those guys pull off the same 5 arpeggios over and over and over, and there's like they're not trying to add any real flair for a lot of these tracks. There's a few times where they step out of it a little bit and there's some color and character, but then the rest of the time it's just kind of like, arpeggios by numbers. It's just, just the same ascending, descending scale, and then they move. And but then you're sitting and you're just listening, and you're like, for fuck's sake, this is just so cleanly done. It's just ridiculous. And and again, it's 2004. These guys are in there and they're just banging this out. And so it's like, my complaints are, I found myself kind of like, but then I'm listening like, God, these songs are really well done, and these guys all play so good, and but there's just places where it feels like they could be going outside the lines a little bit and do more. But again, this all falls back into my own tastes, to where I want things to be a little more angular at times, but still there's inventiveness, and they're trying to do things different, but they're staying inside everything, because all this, the riffing style and the feel and these things, and the formula in some of these songs is so 50 seconds, a minute and a half in, and then they break down and it goes slow, and there's like a slithering part, and then here comes the arpeggios, and then but it's just all so well put together. It's just kind of like, but God, it's good, so it's like, and then everything shines, everything's there. My only other real gripe is I don't like his voice.
I was gonna say, man, the vocals are too dry.
They're just so flat and one dimensional, and just kind of like, well, somebody's got to do it, and it's like they're adequate. They're adequate.
They don't suck.
They don't suck. No, not by no stretch. But it's just like, there's just nothing about it, the vocal performances, that are inspiring in any way. But again, it doesn't. I don't think it detracts from the listen. It doesn't detract from anything. But it's just, I'm sitting here analyzing this so I can write things down, and I'm, and having not listened to this before, and taking it in context to now versus when it came out, and what I was listening to then, and the bands that, like I said, that were doing this, that were techie bands, and in the mid to late 90s and early, I just was like, I'm not, but I some nitpicks and some criticisms overall, but the band is, without a doubt, the guys in the band and the main guy are just absolute talent, all day. some of the parts and pieces, the way it rolls together, I have some issues with. But overall, the songs are so well put together. You know, it's one of those things. You know, I love Portal. I think Portal is an amazing enigma, and you either love it or hate it. And it's like, is that a song or is that a smear on the tape?
Or is that an art piece?
Yeah, you know, and I love that. And, you know, Gorguts, love Gorguts, you know, but then you get into these songs, these 4-minute songs that are just put together right. And he really does. They're just, absolutely, for me, was kind of a saving grace for this, because it's just like, God, this is, you know, it's like, yeah, I already heard that scale already, but yeah, you know, he really did a good job writing the song. So,
Jim.
Yeah, man. I mean, musicality and composition. I mean, musicality, dude. I mean, it's like
A+. I mean,
yeah. I mean, what can you say? I mean,
A+, SATs, he aced them.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
If you can play these riffs and these solos, you're an incredible musician. Period. That's just it. That's about end of story. I mean, it's like, you know, kind of like the height, right? You know, and you know, because it's just like classical music on guitar, right? I mean, what's harder than classical, right? You know, maybe some forms of like technical freeform jazz or come close, but like this is like as hard as it gets, right? So, yeah, musicality, it's the nth degree, man. It's the ultimate. I mean, no one's going to argue that. You know, compositionally, and you know what, like I said, I came into this record thinking that I wasn't gonna like any of this, but compositionally, it surprised me, man. You know, there are plenty of moments on here where the riff was just like, oh man, that's badass, man. You know, like, you know, very head bangable type of riff, you know, that would come up. That wasn't just about technicality. Like there was, you know, there was some real metal motivation behind it, you know, that was there for the sake of the riff to impress the listener, not just with the you know, the capability, but just that moment, that X factor of us listening to a riff and saying, that's badass. Like, you know, that happened several times for me on this record. Should probably give an example here, you know, not just talk about it, like, you know, Diminished to Be, the verse riff there, the use of the harmonics on the verse riff, really cool, super impressive. I like the slow riff that fades out at the end of the song, you know, on Epitaph, you know, the title track, there's an interplay of the riffs post solo, right after that solo, like it really cool, like how the guitar players will play really cool riffs, but they're slightly different on each side, like on the left and the right. So you're kind of like, whoa, you know, what do I pay attention to here? And again, you know, that's kind of an attention to detail that gets overlooked in the midst of all the like the scales that are being run and all that. Like, hey man, let's do something really cool, but not exactly the same, but it's still going to work and it's going to be in key. Like there are several moments like that on this record, and that's the kind of detail I appreciate, you know, where it's in service of the track, where it helps you remember the song, right? They do that kind of stuff, you know, in several places.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, there's hooks. There's some cool hooks in some of these songs.
There are, you know, so, you know, despite my overall, like, you know, kind of like, you know, dismissal of like, you know, the modern interpretation of this genre, like you know, I have respect, for example, the musicians in Archspire, but whenever I hear their music, I'm just like, I don't want to listen to this. You know, like this is not for me, man. You know, you know, no disrespect. You know, I mean, you know, these guys could play circles around me forever. They're incredible guitar players, but it just doesn't do anything. But I feel in here that there was an intrinsic catchiness to the riff writing here that made it the furthest thing from a chore for me to listen to the album over and over again. So yeah, man, I think that, you know, musicality, obviously A+, but compositionally, man, they're up there too, because every song had something interesting in it besides just like the wow, you know, these guys are really talented, you know, it's whatever, right? You know, but there is actually like some really cool riff ideas in here that that justify repeat spins.
Agreed. And it makes me wonder too, the more I listen to this, yeah, there's little hooks sprinkled throughout the album, but if this was a 50-minute album, it makes me wonder how my patience, my attention span would have, because there's a lot of sameness between the tracks. But anyway, yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm just talking. Anyway, Logan.
I mean, I agree, Marty. it part of the magic of this is it's just over 32 minutes and it's 8 tracks to me.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head of where I was going with what I wrote for musicality and composition. I mean, musically, it's astounding. It's amazing. All of the players on here are phenomenal and are, well hallmarked musicians in, realms of metal. Of course, the main guy, Muhammad Gutierrez, I think. This is his main project. He hasn't really gone on to do other stuff. But on this album, we have Christian Munzner, who he's played with Obscura, Spawn of Possession, Alkaloid, Eternity's End, which is a power metal band of all things, and a bunch of other projects. And then the drummer here is Hans Grossman, and he doesn't need any introduction. So, I mean, the musicality is in good hands. Everyone here is going to show off and play their instrument to the best of their, knowledge and ability, which is probably the top couple percent of humans on the planet Earth. So there you go. But I think what separates this album and why I picked it for tonight's album club is compositionally, I think it excels. And compositionally, I think it's digestible and memorable. And you're not going to just listen to this album and it's going to be wallpaper music and then you're going to forget about it as soon as you leave it. I think I think there's more to digest, and that kind of hints back to where they're coming from with pulling from old school 90s death metal, like songs by Death and Atheist and Cynic, where there is still that memorability and the hooks. And I think Necrophagist kind of capture that. I mean, just look at tracks like Stillborn 1 and Stab Wound that really the focus is that main guitar riff that kind of kicks off the song and kind of guides it throughout its whole 3-minute runtime. And then of course the whole time you're going, it's going this direction and that direction and all kinds of different places, but at the same time the core of the track is there, and it's why you're there. The songs are memorable, they're exciting, and they're engaging, and that makes the whole album to me memorable, exciting, and engaging. So I think they did push the tropes of technicality and what they can do with the guitar and riff writing and the neoclassical presence and incorporating the prog tech of the 90s and Spastic Inc. and stuff like that. But they didn't lose sight of what death metal is at its core, and I definitely admire them for that. And I think musicality and compositionally, they both knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I think songwriting, composition, all that stuff. Yeah, A++. Like I said, they aced the SATs. They rehearsed a lot, played a lot of guitar when maybe friends were out, tipping cows or doing whatever, drinking or whatever. But I really like the fact that listening to this as a whole solid piece, yep, it's very complex. The playing feels very frantic. But I think it's the fact that you sit down and listen to it on headphones, the left and right guitars are completely hard panned, and they're each playing something different a lot of the time, not just occasionally. They do it a lot, and it's all farting around the same scale, but then they're playing a little syncopated with the drums, so it's a little offbeat, and all of it together it sounds even more complex than maybe it is. I'm not saying what they're playing is easy. Don't get me wrong. If you said, here, figure these out, I'd be like, nope. Maybe I could, but I don't know if I could play a whole song of it. But I just think it's really clever how they really took the time. They utilized 2 guitar players really well. Like in power metal, you got a lot of linked up twin leads and there's not a lot of that. The solos are standalone, but the riffs are where they kind of have a hard separation, and the two pieces together come together and make the song sound very busy. So in that aspect, I was very impressed from a songwriting standpoint. The drummer, I mean, he is really shining out on this thing, and a lot of little jazz. I don't remember which song. I might have wrote it down in the notes, but it sounds like, you know, those jazz side steps where it sounds like the drum kit's falling down the stairs. He does that a couple times in songs on here, and it throws the guitars even further off the beat a little bit, and it's so cool. It's just kind of like a disorienting feeling, and all these little things they do, you know, whether he's planning them out, and all these songs are in his head and he's tabbing them out before he writes them. That to me is pretty impressive, because, you know, some have to fart around before you stumble on something that inspires you. Just to have all of this, just like separate guitar lines, and the bass comes in, and they give a lot of room to the bass, and yeah, I just think it's really well done. For me, again, I'm agreeing with TJ here. For me, the hardest, the vocals needed to be vocals on this, and he gets the job done. He isn't terrible at it, but I think a more deathly vocalist would have been a nice touch, a nice counter to how clean the music is. I think a really nasty, cancer-throated sounding vocalist would have been a cool addition to this music. Let's talk about the production. Logan.
Yeah, I mean, the production is definitely, I could see it being an issue for people, for sure. Like, I think the production is here to serve the purpose of the main goal of, you know, acing your SAT. Obviously it has to be perfect. It has to be clean. It has to complement everything that the instrumentation is doing and allow you to see, you know, just all the wizardry and how they show off. And it requires it to feel clean and sterile and, you know, maybe a bit lifeless at times. Like, I'm not going to lie that the production, you know, could be an issue and can be an issue. Yeah. For me, I think it is a product of the goal of this album. So I don't necessarily dislike it. Like, one of the goals of the album, I think, is to show off and is to be, you know, as clean and technical and, you know, precise as possible. So thus the production needs to be like this. At the same time, I don't think the production isn't taking away the weight and the ferocity of some of these songs. It's not like helping or adding to it, but I don't think it's completely neutering the performances on here. So I think in future productions for future tech death bands, that becomes an issue. And that, as I said, that's one of the reasons I think Necrophagist kind of become like at the gates of this style of music, where their clones are kind of watering down what they initially put to record. But on this album, I think the death metal still shines through. I mean, riffs that are like on Stillborn 1 are still like heavy and like, you know, Morbid Angel, have that Morbid Angel kind of groove to them. And then thrashy riffs like on the title track Epitaph are still, you know, have that bite and that sharp edge as well. I think that the drum production is great. I think the bass production is great when it wants to shine through. This is maybe my one little nitpick. The bass will pop up into like the main register and into your main limelight when it wants you to see it. But then it'll disappear just as quickly, like in the next like stanza, basically. So I kind of wish they found a bit more of a middle ground for the bass to be in throughout the whole recording, because oftentimes it will end up hiding behind like the bass drums and what the drums are doing. And I wish it was a bit more audible. But of course, when it is fully audible and when they want you to hear the bass in the mix, I think it's perfect. It's one of my one of the highlights of the album. Like on track 7, when that bass just drops in to do that like crazy groovy part to kind of accent that like staccato riff. Amazing. One of my favorite death metal moments, period. And I think the production helps that sound as good as it does. But then on other sections of songs, the bass almost feels completely absent when it's not like being at the forefront or, trying to do something unique. So that's what my one little nitpick for the production. But other than that, I do think it's doing what the band and wanted it to do and what it kind of really needs to do for Epitaph to succeed.
Jim.
So, we've talked about musicality and composition. We've talked about, just generally like, how, there's some great songwriting here beyond just the capabilities of the musicians themselves. But the production is the one thing that I really don't like about this record at all. Yes, I know this is technical death metal. This is what it's supposed to sound like. It's supposed to be super clean, super precise. It helps bring out, the kind of nuances of the riff, with the guitars, with everything being super clean, you can hear every picked note, everything is clear. Nothing is buried. But it also feels like, when you're talking about something that is kind of like conjured up in a clinical environment, being very, it's Berkeley, College of Music, slash Juilliard, direction, in terms of musicianship level, like, adding like a super clean production on top of it really does push forward that clinical aesthetic. Like it does sound like, brain surgery here, and for me, if there was like more warmth in there, just a little bit of something to remind us that these are human beings doing this, it would have increased my enjoyment of the record. I even, think that, I would have been a lot more excited about like putting this in my collection had that been the case. But it's so clean and it's so precise. It just it's that production aspect of it, it's just off-putting for me, right? And that said, if I put my personal sort of a front to like ultimate precision in the studio aside, the actual what it does for the musicianship in terms of highlighting it is beneficial, right? You can clearly make out everything that everybody's doing. You can sort of imagine yourself watching these guys play live and what's happening, because nothing's hidden or buried beneath any studio accoutrement. There's no sound effects, there's no like intonation issues on the guitars or anything like that. But there again, I feel like there's a little bit of emptiness there too, because a little bit of the humanity sucked out. But on the good side, the riffs sound really, really great. Distortions there. I do wish the gain was a little bit more. I think when they're doing like alternate picking, not tremolo, but alternate picking, or fast, slower down picking like they do in I think it's a Stillborn one, because the gain is like a little less, like there's just a little less crunch than I would like when they're playing the slower kind of riffs. I think it could have been a little heavier there. Just a nitpicking thing. Overall, I think the guitar sounds decent. I do hear what Logan's saying. It's like, hey, keep the bass down, and okay, well, I guess they're not turning the knobs manually here. They're okay. At 31.5 seconds, we do a bass break. Okay, then crank up, crank that channel up to 11 for 2 seconds while he does a bass break, and then pull it right back down 2 seconds later. It does sound like that, but when you hear that bass, it does sound great. I do like the bass sound in those moments, and of course, what he's doing is incredibly impressive, man. It's like that dude's like, yeah, you six stringers and your little 10, 12 gauge guitar strings. Let me show you what I can do on these fat boys, bro. I'm just as good, man. Come on. And it's always impressive to me when bass players are like running arpeggios, in these situations. But yeah, really, really fun to hear that. Drums, I don't have a problem with here, production wise. I like that they're kind of loud in the mix. The snare is right up there, because the guy is he's so good at what he does, and I like that he combines that there's a ferociousness to his, like, snare playing that I really like, that kind of permeates the record, and it's one of the driving forces of it for me. So I don't have a problem with that being like up in the mix, probably even a little more louder than normal for this style. But yeah, I think that's kind of right in the pocket. Vocals, like TJ and Marty has said, they're fine. I don't have a problem with it. There also isn't a lot of variety. There isn't like a moment, where I'm like, yeah, it's just, it's just more like, oh, they're cool. But let's be honest here. Could that partially be to do with the incredible guitar playing? Yeah, maybe it's distracting. Maybe there's more there. Maybe if I could tear my brain away from the bass and the guitars and the drums for a minute and just say, I'm going to listen to the vocals solely for like 3 minutes, maybe it would have hit me a little harder. But as it is, the levels for each instrument, I'm fine with. Just the overall, just coldness of the production. I just wish there was a little bit more, red blood flowing.
TJ.
Yeah, the production is perfect, spotless, glistening, dead. It's just dead. The only time there's any real headroom in any of it is when the leads kick in. The rest of a lot of times it sounds like small. Like these songs feel like they need to be just way bigger. Like just and again, everything sounds great, but it's just the way they, and again, I think this all boils down to, master tinkerer of this band. I want something that's so slick and so precise and so perfect, and that's exactly what this is. And it's so static that it sucks all the life out of it. And this is really my hugest pick on this, again, like with Jim. I think the production, they could have gone with something that had more breath to it. But again, I think it's all kind of, again, eye of the beholder, eye of the creator here. And you can't take anything away from the performances here, the skill of this band. It's not about any of that. These gripes and whatever. I have nothing to do with that. I mean, I think we've all laid that out pretty clearly here. It's just, I would have liked this record to sound different than it does.
I would put money on the fact that you got a guy here that is writing these songs essentially on computer by tab out of what he hears in his head to tablature, and then it plays back MIDI. He got so used to so many hours hearing these songs as MIDI notes, whatever sounds he chose. That's just how those songs were to him. So then when you go to recreate them, whether it's subconsciously or a conscious choice, he's going to want them to resemble what he's been listening to for months. Whether that was the intention or it just happened that way, because knowing now how he wrote this stuff, you just get so used to hearing something a certain way, and when you finally go to commit things to tape the way for an album, you're still going to be clinging to that clinical, the clinical sound that a computer is going to give you. But I will say, I think the production is bold for the fact that it hides nothing. You've got to be on your fucking game. There's no hiding behind distortion here. There's enough. Me and TJ are playing the same thing. I'm a little off. I may be up on the fret, but it's hidden because of the words. And nope, none of that here. You're swinging in the wind on this thing. So you got to be super tight. I'm also very surprised that, an album that sounds this absolutely clean, I expected going in hearing a completely triggered drum kit. I didn't get that. There's some thump in those kicks. It sounds like a real kit. It doesn't sound all clicked up. It doesn't sound like a Pete Sandoval kit or, yeah. Guitar is, of course, thin. I think they're that way for a reason. It kind of eliminates that veil of dissonance that can swallow lower frequencies in a mix. So again, I think it all stems back to the guy spent months and months and months listening to this on a computer as MIDI notes. It's just the way that he needed to have the album sound at the end of the day. Everybody get to go here? I didn't skip anyone. Okay. Favorite, least favorite songs. TJ.
Oh, let's see. I really enjoyed Only Ash Remains, track 6. Got some long notes. I love the dueling. The dueling opening was kind of mad, but the vocal riffs and stuff in it are really a cool, kind of swirling and bizarre feel to them. It has a bit more of an interesting arrangement. I like the riffs a lot more. And then Symbiotic and Theory, a very intricate opening riff. I love how there's a lot more timing and tempo shifts in this. Holds pretty steady till about a minute in, and then the bass solo, 2 minutes killer, hammer-on riff and a crunch. Great mood. The leads are a little bit more inventive in this one. And then Epitaph, track 5, cool broken riff at the Vox part, more emphasis on changes in time and feel. The break around the middle of the song is very atonal and dark. Very cool track. Otherwise, at least fave, I don't know. I didn't really go into that. But those tracks really stood out for me.
Logan.
All right. I guess once again to highlight one of the secret ways this album kind of succeeds, it is indeed the track listing is 8 songs, 32 minutes. It just flies by, and I think there's a lot of variety in the tracks where they are switching up. Like you got the really fast-paced tracks, and then you got some songs that do feel a bit more slowed down and groove-oriented at their core. I think it's best accented by like my 2 personal favorite tracks on the album. The openers, we got Stab Wound going right into Stillborn 1. Stab Wound is just that riff a minute whirlwind of just technicality and notes, and a really good statement of purpose for what I think Necrophagists want to do on here. But then at the same time, that main riff is so memorable, and even him just shouting "Stab Wound" is kind of a hook that kind of stands out from that track. And then into Stillborn 1, which is my favorite song on the album. It immediately slows it down and falls back into this more groove-oriented riff. And it just made me think of a cool Morbid Angel riff off of Gateways to Annihilation or World of Shit or something like that. But even at the same time, that track, Stillborn 1, still knows how to break into a thrashy middle section and kind of get the blood pumping. But man, that riff though gets me every single time. I absolutely love it. Absolutely crushing. Epitaph, I think the title track has been one that's grown on me the most over the years of listening to it. It's got the thrashiest and most intricate main riff that it comes in and it's one thing, but then they just change it up. And I think this is the one where you can hear the 2 guitarists going at it in both channels simultaneously, and they just keep adding different trees and branches onto this main riff. It's so entertaining. To me, it's never dull to go through just how they take this one riff and change it up throughout the runtime of the title track. As far as my favorite bass song goes, quick shout out to Only Ash Remains. That one just has these bass dive bombs that kind of just drop out of nowhere, and it's so fucking cool. And then they end it on this swinging lounge jazz vibe. They change it up for the last 20
It's like
30
a classical
seconds.
piece. I don't know what
Classical
the song
piece.
is. Yeah.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
It's I recognize the melody line, but I don't know anything about that. I've heard the song before, but I think it's a classical.
I'm not well learned in that stuff. So.
Me either. I think I own 4 classical CDs. I couldn't tell you where they're at.
Best of Mozart, Wagner, and Bach. And
Bach,
that's it.
yep.
Yeah. And then 7 is the last song I want to highlight. That main like staccato riff is absolutely crushing. It's like, a little jarring. And then the bass just comes in kind of to serve as like the counterpoint after one full iteration of the riff. And it's so groovy and it's almost danceable. It's impressive how they actually pull it off. And then they still incorporate some like thrashy sections to 7 as well, just to keep things going. But I mean, I could talk about every single song on here. The album absolutely flies by, and yeah, each song I think has something special on it.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, I agree with you, Logan. Not you, Marty. That it's a weird jazzy piece on
I've heard the song before. I don't know if it's classical or whatever it is, but I've heard that it's not their own. Those aren't their riffs.
It's actually my least favorite moment on the record.
Me too.
I think it's
high five.
I think it's the goofiest, weirdest part. It just doesn't fit with the record at all to me. But sucks because I love the rest of the song. Like
yeah,
the sweep picking bass at the beginning, the unusual Gorguts style dissonant riffs on the verses, the blasts are really pummeling, and it's like, dude, if it wasn't for that, it would have been one of my favorites on the album. As it is, it's still a great song. Just has like my least favorite moment on the record, but in terms of highlights, well, first of all, there are no bad songs on this record. There really aren't. Like I had no problem listening to this album back and forth over and over. The only cringy moment was literally that outro, and that's such a brief thing. Like it didn't even kill the rest of the song for me. Ignominious and Pale. I really like that one. Just a killer solo at 2 minutes in. Like of course they all are, but just there's a lot of feel in the shred and that solo that's 2 minutes in that song. There's like a dueling riffs thing going on 3 minutes in, where like the left channel is playing, but the right channel is playing with something that it's like a very dissonant kind of a riff, but it still works somehow. It's really cool, really different. And just and then it goes out with this manic string skipping riff at 310, like it's just nuts, man. And stuff like that is really hard to play, so it's always impressive for me to hear someone pulling it off and pulling it off well. I love the title track. I mentioned earlier the interplay of the riffs already. And that this is one of the songs where the neoclassical is actually, integrated into a riff in the song, not just lead. Like it's just a crazy scale that it's just part of the riff, and really cool, very innovative, and headbangable as well. 7, I also call out 7, Logan. I like this riff's actually kind of, it's down tuned, and down picked with lots of cool harmonics on there. A great antidote to the wizardry going on is hearing those harmonics kind of breaks it up, gives it a little more energy for me. And of course, there's the awesome bass break that you mentioned. I also call that out as well. It's really killer. And I think they finished strong, man. Symbiotic in theory. There's a great alternate picked verse on the riff on the verses. Let's see, almost like an odd time riff, but the drums are playing straight forward, which is really cool. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's great that it's hard to explain, right? It makes it interesting. Finger tapping 1 minute in by all the guitarists all together, and that's really cool. Just like this really kind of triumphant moment where all three of them are just doing this crazy tapping thing. Really like that piece a lot. Great headbanging riff that's palm muted 220 slow. It's brutal. It's definitely one of the just pure death metal moments on the record, and so it deserves call out for that. Nice dissonant opening chords, kind of like are behind the solo. Like if you listen to the solo, like about 3.5 minutes in, they're playing these dissonant open chords, they're letting them ring out, which is there's few moments where the chords are allowed to ring out, right? They're kind of all over, but they're doing it here and behind the solo, and it just elevates the solo, but also it's really cool to just kind of, pay attention to the rhythm guitar there. And then everything just kind of gets more and more insane before the song ends. So a lot's going on at Symbiotic in Theory, and it is an excellent closer. Highly recommended. So yeah, favorites are definitely Symbiotic in Theory, Epitaph, title track, and then it's a tie for me between 7 and Ignominious and Pale.
Well, since we were talking about it, I was curious. And basically that chunk in Only Ashes Remain, I typed in, what is the classical piece added to the Necrophagist track Only Ashes Remain? I typed into the Google machine. And it says the classical piece added to the Necrophagist track Only Ashes Remain is Sergei Prokofiev's Dance of the Nights, which is derived from his ballet Romeo and Juliet. Additionally, a section of Ludwig van Beethoven's Für Elsie is also mentioned in relation to that track. So
It's Marty's way of saying, I told you so.
Suck it. No, I'm thinking I've never heard of that composer, but then when they mention Beethoven, I must have a Beethoven CD too. So I've heard that riff before, but agreed with Jim, the fact that there's no bad tracks on here, but that part annoyed me. It made me think they have a bit of a sense of humor to put that on there, but it didn't make sense with the rest of the song because it's one of my favorite songs. It's a total ripper. I found myself gravitating more towards the fast songs on here. Which one was the fastest? I think, yeah, track 7. The song 7. Definitely the fastest track on here. Interesting, complex riffs. It sounds more busy than they are due to the layering and the syncopation, which we've talked about that already. I'm not going to go on all that again, but I really love how frantic when the blast is hit. It just feels like everything is just buzzing, which is, the music, the notes, not necessarily the production, unfortunately. A little buzz would have been nice. Epitaph, another fast one. I really like the tight blasting on here. Excellent layered guitar lines, that left and right, different, separate. It's totally cool. I like how they did that. And this is the track where the drum performance, it feels like he really throws into some jazzy moments where the kit's falling down the stairs. There's like a lot of like quick, fast rolls, and it's cool how the guitars kind of fall in with that as well. It's kind of kind of throws you off kilter a bit. It's a nice touch to give the listener a bit of the bends, or like a Funhouse feeling when a lot of this music is so straight. It's so locked into a certain dynamic. But yeah, I think, they start off the record the right way with Stab Wound. It's a good mission statement. They will let you know right away it's going to be a complex, though manageable sounding listening experience. You know what I mean? It's complex, but they have the hooks in place. There's the solos. You think the solos in particular would go crazy, but they never really do. Like TJ said, a lot of arpeggios, but the meat of the solos, there's a lot of like melody there. They don't really go into full on complex, opening another dimension style of shredding, which I appreciate. The older I've gotten, I used to hate solos, and now I'm starting to kind of like them. I like the more melodic ones, and they kind of walk a fine line on this album here for sure. Judgment, final thoughts. Jim, we'll start with you.
Cool. Like I'll end the show the way I started it, and I was definitely pleasantly surprised. I ended up liking this. I just didn't think I was going to, and no, it was good. I don't think this is a style that I'll ever actively seek out. But if I came across this and it was like decently priced used in a record store, I might pick it up, because I think there's enough like surprises on this record musically that it kept me easily returning to it this week. It wasn't a chore to prepare this week for Album Club, and so that tells me that there's more to explore in this record. So yeah, man, I would pick this up. Like I said, I'm not going to seek it out, but if I came across it and it was reasonably priced, I'd pick it up.
TJ.
I don't know, it gets a 6. I like technical stuff. This one, I enjoyed listening to it. It's a cool record. I don't know that I need it. If I saw it in the wild, I don't know if I'd buy it. Maybe. I'm not really sure. Again, I don't know. Maybe if I had been there when it happened, you know, going back 2 years now, I think I was a little bit more enamored with what they were doing at the time. You know, to listen to it now, it's just kind of like, there's stuff that came out before and after that I think outshines this record. So I don't know. I get why it has the kind of bona fides that it has. But for me, it doesn't really get there. Again, it's a cool record to listen to, and 32 minutes. It was around and around. It was easy just to flip it over and keep going, and which was really nice. It really kind of helped me dig down into it and stuff. But yeah. But ultimately, it's just
All right. I'll let Logan have the last word on this one. I'm 100%. Me and Jim are sharing the same brain on this one. I feel the same way. I don't know that I need it. If I saw it cheap in a used bin, I might pick it up. But it's not going to get played. It just isn't. I've got some classic tech death bands that I just don't care. Pestilence, after a certain extent, I kind of quit on. Cynic, I listen to maybe one or two of their albums once every 7 years. I don't know. It's just not. I'd rather listen to Kiss. I'll just say it, Kiss or Halloween. I think technical proficiency, and I will say also the fact that this was a 32-minute long record, that played well into the fact that re-listenability, having to listen to it 3-4 times in a row, it really allowed me to digest the album more than I would have if it was a 50-some minute record. And I ended up liking a lot of the songs. I think there's really cool moments in each song. Not each song. There's like maybe 4 or 5 songs on here that have some really cool hooks that want to hear again type of thing. So I think having an album with so many notes coming at you, it's important to have it a less runtime. And that was a good thing in my digesting this record. So I think technical proficiency, songwriting overall, I think it's a 9 all day long. I think for personal preference, I'm going to have to go with a 7. Logan.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried to hide the fact that this is an important album for me. And I could see this being a time and place kind of album, like you had to be getting into death metal around like the 2000s and this be one of the first, like, here's the most technical thing you've ever heard, kid, kind of situations. And for me, it was, and it kind of is a cornerstone of my death metal taste and of kind of what I look for in pushing the envelopes of technicality, and kind of where I draw the line in a sense with technicality. Like, I think the songwriting here is perfect, but there's a lot of bands that have taken the Necrophagist style and pushed it without like that songwriting death metal core, and it doesn't have the same impact. And I've ended up not following technical death metal as much the past 10 years or so. And, this is to me a high watermark and potentially, the beginning of a scene, but also like the death knell of a scene too, the epitaph of, technical death metal. Like, this is the in boss, what all want to reach, but what can't. And because it's here, none can really push as far as what Necrophagist did and be as successful. Like, it's concise. The songwriting is there. The technicality is there. Yeah, this is a big album for me. Probably a top 10 death metal album, and yeah, enjoyed sharing it with y'all tonight. And easily a 9.5 out of 10. So
right on. Yeah, good pick, man. We haven't really. Well, we did do. Kellen picked the one technical one a while ago, but I think this is way better than the one Kellen picked for sure. Which one was it? Spawn of Possession.
Spawn of Possession.
Cabinet.
Yeah. Shift robe.
Yeah. This one was easier for me to repeat.
Yeah.
Listen.
100%. But that leaves us to the cliffhanger. What is Jim going to pick for next week?
So yeah, cliffhanger. Yeah, that's right. There you go.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah. I'm not going to reach far for this. It's already sitting on my desk, but also like it strikes me now that it's the complete antithesis of this week. So maybe it works. I want to listen to this all week. So let's do some Razor,
Right
man.
All right.
Executioner song.
Razor Executioner song it is. I have not spun that record in 100 years, so it'll be cool to get the vinyl off the shelf and give her a spin.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, yeah, show notes. It's been a busy week on Heavy Metallurgy. Today dropped a review. I don't even remember the name of the band because, oh wait, I threw the paper away. X something or other. X.
I can mention it. Don't worry.
What is the band?
Ex Imperatus, and then a bunch of other letters. It's like a 55 letter technical death metal band. Yeah, and also Ectovoid. Yeah.
Yep. And I did a power metal 3-way review on Sunday. Alan did a 3-way German black metal review on Monday. More stuff coming. Lots of stuff coming. There's a Testament interview in the works. Sue's going to be doing a Testament interview with Chuck Billy. And that's coming. All sorts of stuff coming. Friday, Paradise Lost deep dive with Albert from Decibel and David Gelke, who wrote the book on Paradise Lost. And yeah, you guys have anything you want to plug or add or talk about before we jump?
I don't think so.
Burial gift. Go get Burial Gift.
Yes.
Link in the description, Eihwaz Recordings. Tapes are still available.
That's right.
Lots of other killer shit too. TJ, anything?
I don't know. I got some more trivia about jogging. Yeah, the first man that shit himself during a 25K was a man called Carl Weitz in 1954.
I'm sure someone did that before they were taking a record of that. I'm sure that happened.
That may be the truth, but this is what I got.
Oh, okay.
That was the year they started keeping records, Marty.
And I love the fact that you are telling us about jogging trivia.
It's only to honor our brother Kellen because he's a jogger.
Yeah,
whatever the fucking hell he does with them shoes and that job he has. I don't know. Anyway, love you, brother.
Right on, man. Cheers to Kellen. He'll be back soon, hopefully. And y'all, thanks for joining us. Great Wednesday as always. Had a lot of fun. We'll see you next week with this crew to talk about Razor Executioner song. And for the rest, see you Friday. Cheers.